Nora Smith.
Cherry pointed to the placard in Anthony's hand as she slowly read out the name written on it in her young, tender voice. She was just learning how to read by sounding out words. She asked excitedly, "Did I read it right?" Nora rubbed her head and said in a cool, melodious voice, "Yes, you did." Anthony was dazzled by the little smile playing at the corner of her lips as she looked down at her daughter. Where had such an amazing beauty appeared from? This woman was absolutely stunning. It didn't cross his mind for a second that she could be Nora. Nora was indifferent to the burning fervor in his eyes. Cherry, on the other hand, blinked and asked innocently, "Mister, are you here to pick?" Before she could finish her question, Anthony tossed the placard behind him as fast as he could and interrupted her. "Of course not, little girl. I have nothing to do with that ugly lady." Disbelief appeared in Cherry's big eyes. Which part of her mum was ugly? "Mister, what are you talking about? Are you going blind? That's sad." Her words stunned Anthony for a moment. Taking advantage of the opportunity to escape, Nora stepped away coldly. Anthony wanted to go after her, but his assistant stopped him. "Mr. Gray, don't forget your father's instructions." Anthony watched Nora as she walked away with Cherry and muttered under his breath scornfully, "How great would it be if that ugly freak was even half as beautiful as her sisters? Maybe I would have put up with her disgusting behavior and not had to call off the engagement." In the presidential suite of the Hotel Finest, a Hunt Corporation hotel, Nora scrolled through her cell phone after putting Cherry to bed. She already had 7 or 8 missed calls from her family. On returning the first call, she was greeted with an angry tirade from her father. "Nora, what are you doing? Why aren't you picking up? You were the one who made all this fuss about breaking off the engagement. Get over here and stop wasting everyone's time. Your younger sister and Anthony have got something good going. Don't ruin it." It was impossible for Nora's father to let go of the Grays after climbing the social ladder and establishing a connection to such a prestigious family. That was why he had refused to break off the engagement between Anthony and Nora all these years. But now the Grays had finally relented and agreed to let Nora's half-sister marry into the family instead. The two families had reached an agreement. It was all the same to Nora's father, as long as one of his daughters married Anthony. Nora said lightly, "I'll come over now." She entrusted Cherry to Mrs. Lewis, the nanny that had traveled with them to the U.S., and went out. While she was waiting for the elevator, she heard some soft footsteps behind her. Before I tell you who was behind her, I want to beg you to subscribe, please. It really means a lot. Back to the story. Nora turned to see a child dressed in gray silk pajamas, with tousled short hair, standing in the elevator lobby and looking around with sleepy eyes. Her daughter had short hair, and her exquisite, adorable facial features made it hard to distinguish whether she was a boy or a girl. And when they were leaving abroad, Cherry would always give Nora a hug every time she went out. It seemed perfectly normal for her daughter to come and wave her off, so Nora didn't think much about it. She just squatted down as she always did and hugged and kissed the child on the forehead. Although her voice was low, it was gentle. "I'll bring you some chocolate mousse cake tonight. Baby, go back to your room now." Her daughter's usually quick-witted eyes became dazed for a moment. Nora figured she was probably so sleepy that she had turned silly. Then she nodded and turned around and walked away. They were staying on the top floor of the hotel, in a luxury presidential suite. There was only one other suite on the same level. Apart from the one Nora and her daughter were currently booked into, it was said that the Hunts kept the other suite free for their own use, so it was not open to guests. Nora figured there was not likely to be anyone staying there. The elevator chimed as it arrived. Nora went in right away. She was gone so quickly that she didn't see the door to the other presidential suite opening. A tall, striking figure walked out. The man's back was to the elevator entrance. His voice was low and deep, and he had an imposing aura that was hard to ignore. He ordered the child, "Go back to your room, Pete." 5-year-old Pete Hunt, the only grandson of the family, was still staring in the direction of the elevator. The soft hug and the kiss on their forehead had made him blush uncontrollably. Pete's face scrunched up tightly. He had been brought up strictly ever since he was a baby. Every one of his meals was carefully created to give him the best possible nutritional value. But a strong desire suddenly emerged in the boy, who had always been taught to exercise such strong self-control. He announced, I want to eat some chocolate mousse cake. Justin Hunt was bemused by the child's response. He picked him up and carried him back into their suite in one arm. Exuding an icy aura that many people found intimidating, Justin walked over to his computer and continued the video conference he had been in the middle of. The person on the screen gave him their report. Mr. Hunt, we've confirmed that Athena has indeed returned to the States. On top of that, we've just secured a photograph of her. It didn't come cheap either. I'll send it to you right away. Justin's thin lips parted slightly, and he coldly spat out 2 words. Find her. It was brightly lit at the Smiths' villa. Outside the door, Nora listened as the digital lock repeated its input error voice line. Her lips curled up in a mocking smile. The password had been changed, and no one had even bothered to tell her. She lowered her eyes emotionlessly, raised her cell phone, and tapped it a few times. Then she pasted on the digital lock. A few seconds later, the door opened with a click. There was a lively atmosphere in the living room. Seeing the gathered crowd, Nora realized she had just walked into a birthday party for her younger half-sister, Angela Smith. No one had noticed her come in, so Nora found a sofa in the corner and sat down, intending to rest for a while. But soon she heard a low cry drift in from the deck outside. A few girls had surrounded another girl and were pushing her around. Angela, who was wearing a blue dress, twirled a glass of red wine in her fingers and sneered as she looked down at the girl who was being pushed around. It was Nora's cousin, Lisa Black. Angela had never liked Lisa. She had always been on good terms with Nora, whom Angela despised. As Lisa stood there, one of the girls deplorably hurled, "Did you just say she actually has a nice face? There must be something wrong with your eyes. That ugly freak looks like a pig. Angela's toes are prettier than that, fatty. Surely you can see how gross she is." Angela eventually seemed to decide to intervene. She took out a photo of Nora taken at a time when her weight had been especially high and played with it in her hands. "Hey, you're all being too nasty. Be nice to Lisa." Angela smiled. "Let's all just calm down and settle this with a fun little bet." Lisa's voice was weak in her throat as she said, "What kind of bet?" Angela pointed at the photo. "If you can prove that she would really be good-looking if she lost some of that weight, I'll eat this photo. If you can't do it, then you'll eat it. How does that sound? That's pretty fair, right?" The other girls laughed gleefully. "Yeah, right. Never lose all that weight. What will you do? What are you going to do? Get liposuction to prove she might be pretty under all of those rolls? You have absolutely no way of proving she'll look good after she slims down. So eat the photo. Eat the photo." The circle of girls clapped and squealed. Angela held up the photo to Lisa's face with a mocking smile. "Are you going to eat it all yourself, or do you want us to help you with it?"